Well, this book, many of us this morning will recognize this because it is almost like it's a journey that we were on and continue to be on. It began in 2019, I think, just before COVID. It may have been a little bit prophetic. Control the illusion and the lie. Seeing as when COVID came, we all realized that there was no such thing as control. Yeah. But what I'm going to do is share quickly about the book, just a quick overview, and then I've got a couple of people to come and say a sentence or two about how they've been impacted by it, because some people have worked through it already. And then I'm hoping to share something from the book and perhaps leading to a time of ministry, prayer ministry, if that seems appropriate. That would seem helpful. So, if you're as old as me, you remember this. Yeah, a few nodding. The Shack. It was a New York Times bestseller, over 6 million copies in print. But the authors of The Shack wasn't just William Paul Young. It was written in collaboration with Wayne Jacobsen and Brad Cummings. I don't know whether there are some of us who will remember Wayne Jacobsen. Wayne Jacobsen, 20 years ago, Wayne Jacobsen came to stay with us, and he spent a week in the church. And basically what happened when Wayne came was it fundamentally altered our direction of travel as a church. It fundamentally altered my direction of travel as a person. And effectively what Wayne introduced to us was that being in faith is less about what we're doing for God and more about what God's doing for us. It sounds selfish. But when you think about it, we can't do anything until God has done something for us and we've received it. So that fundamentally altered our direction away from this massive focus of what could we do for God as a church and me in my life. And the focus altered to, how can I receive what God's doing for me? But the other amusing thing is that Wayne looked at a calendar on my desk, and it went ahead 18 months, and it was on paper, and it still is on paper, in fact. And it went ahead 18 months, and it had got all the events in that I was thinking about for 18 months for the church in those days. And Wayne said, Gary, you do know that control is an illusion, don't you? And it sort of hit me. So 20 years later, I wrote this book, Control the Illusion and the Lie. And I sent it to Wayne. Well, no, I didn't. I just let him know. And he read the book. And he said this. This is Wayne's review of the book, and I think it's in the book. And Wayne says this: life happens to all of us, tragedies as well as triumphs. We are repeatedly told that we can take control of our lives and get the results we want. Poppycock. Finally, a book that dares to tell the truth and unravel the illusions that cause so much anguish. In this simple yet profound read, Gary Smith, that's me, gives you a roadmap out of the illusion of control and into a growing trust in how God works. It's a life changer, he says. He's written a few books, Wayne has, as well as co-writing The Shack. So Wayne summed that up very well indeed. What I'd like to do now is just to quickly go over the sort of territory of the book, how it works, and how we might read it or engage with it. And then I'll focus in on one thing. So, control. We live with the illusion that we can make life happen for us and for ours. Yeah? And we live under the lie that we must make life happen. It's a driven and oppressive way to live. Wayne, in his note, referred to it as the illusions that cause so much anguish. This need to make life happen. This is my kind of life, not God's kind of life. I'm going to come back to that as a main point later. So we live with this illusion that we have to make life happen, otherwise it won't happen. However, the good news, according to Jesus, is we don't have to live like this. And we're not supposed to live like this. Instead, we can become more like him and live freely and lightly. As Jesus says in Matthew 11, we can live freely and lightly as he does. Life in all its fullness, in all circumstances. Imagine that. Life in all its fullness, in all circumstances. Not just the good bits. Is that within our reach? Is that available to us? Well, Jesus says, yes, it is. In fact, he says, you must have this. You must have this kind of life. I also said there that if we want the Jesus kind of life, we live that life not by trying to do what Jesus would do, or trying to remember what Jesus would say as the circumstances of life come. Not by trying to do that. It's impossible. You'll never remember. What did Jesus do about this? What would Jesus say about that? That isn't the call. The call of Jesus is, instead of trying to do what he would do and say what he would say, the call is that we might become like him. And as we become more and more like him, we will automatically think his thoughts. Paul says this, you must have the mind of Christ, he says. It's an imperative. We'll automatically think his thoughts and do what he would do. That is not only within our reach, it's the call on our lives. And when we engage with the world as Jesus would, if he were us, then we will live like he did, freely and lightly. So that's a main sort of message or main part of the book, the call to become more like him. However, it isn't instant. You can't instantly decide to become more like Jesus. Monday morning it's going to happen. You can't instantly do that. It's a spiritual journey. It requires a spiritual journey to get this process going. And it's a journey that we'll embark on and experience the whole of our lives. The idea is that we're made in the image of God, but we're transformed into his likeness to become more like him. So we're not automatically like Jesus. We have the image of God. We have the capability. We're born with the image of God. We're made. But we're not like him. We're transformed into his likeness. So we need a journey. We need a spiritual journey. I just want to say quickly what spiritual journey is. Some of you may not have come across it, or it may have come across in a different way. Spiritual journey is, it's like this. Imagine you'd got 4 novels in front of you, Jane Austen novels or whatever, in front of you, and you got all the main novels there. Imagine reading a chapter from one, a chapter from another, 2 chapters from the next one, and 1 chapter from the last one. Imagine that. Would you get the drift? Would you be able to get the drift of what on earth was going on? Well, no, you wouldn't. And I'm afraid we live our Christian lives a bit like that. And sometimes we hear great things and they impact us. We have great experiences sometimes and they impact us and they change us. And then we walk away from that one and we have another experience, or we hear another idea and we think, oh, that's really good. Can't quite remember the last idea I had, but this is a really good one. And then the Christian machine is based on throwing out these constant new ideas. Fantastic. But the problem is, it's like walking around in the wilderness for 40 years. You never get anywhere with that. You don't grow. You don't find the healing that you're looking for in your life. Just round and round in circles. So spiritual journey is where it's joined up, like Richard talks about the joined up life. Spiritual journey is where one experience leads to the next and overlaps it, and we carry it forward to the next and to the next. And as we join those spiritual experiences up, or those encounters up, so we grow and so we find healing. So the book is a spiritual journey. You could use any book as a spiritual journey if it's written that way, but this book is written as a spiritual journey. When you start it, each chapter builds on the previous one, on the next one, and the one after that. I'll just ask Dawn if she'd like to just share a comment. A couple of people have worked well into the book, into the journey, some all the way through. So I'm intrigued to hear something about what happened.
Yes, for some of us, we did this journey a few years ago. And it is a walk, it's a journey. Gary shared it in his talks. And I found at the time this whole idea of being open, empty, and detached really helpful. And then, of course, we went into the pandemic and life changed, didn't it? And some of those practices of openness, emptiness, and detachment, I lost. And that's why it's really good to have this book, actually, because it is all that teaching, but in a book, but also in a walk, because you can walk it slowly as you're ready for it. And I've shared before that my main issue at the moment is that I overthink things. I'm planning ahead. I find it hard to live in this moment. And I get anxious and stressed. And there are various keys in this book that address direct issues like that. And that's why I found it helpful. One of the most helpful things at the moment for me is the idea of embracing my own powerlessness. Because the illusion is that we have power to control things. And of course we don't, because God is the only one with that power. So this idea of embracing my own powerlessness, doing what I can, but embracing my own powerlessness to make things happen, is becoming really valuable. And it's a walk. And I don't think this book is the end of this walk. I think it's a stage on the walk. I think the talks were a stage on the walk. I think this book is a part of the walk, but I think it will develop and continue because it's authentic. It's an authentic walk to Gary's life, and it's an authentic walk to our lives as well. And so I think this is almost just a stage in the journey.
And in the early days, I got this idea that it would be good to follow a chapter, to read a chapter and let it settle. And in those days, I was saying, read a chapter and then reflect on it for a fortnight, and then read the next one. So there are 14 chapters, so that would take you 28 weeks. So, spiritual journey. So what is the journey in the book? Well, as many of us know, if we want to become more like Jesus, we need to know what Jesus is like. What's he like? Well, in the Beatitudes, Jesus, this was apparently his main message, his premier message, his summary of everything is the Beatitudes. Interesting. In The Chosen, it comes up at the end of series 2. This is the big message he talks about. This is the big message. This is the center of it all. The Beatitudes. In fact, it's the first 3 Beatitudes. And Jesus reveals what he's like. And he also reveals the journey we must undertake to become like him. That's in the book. So, the book takes you on a spiritual journey of becoming more like Jesus. I've said this, it's best to read a chapter a week, and when you've read it, let it soak. Just read the chapter over and over again. And practice. It's a new way of living. You're not doing anything extra. You're doing everything you're doing now, but learning the Jesus way instead of your way. I mean, I know that my way doesn't work. I need the Jesus way. And the book walks you into that. It enables us to live God's kind of life instead of our own kind of life. I would say this, in the feedback I'm getting, some from the States and some from the UK, people are sharing back to me that in the first 3 chapters, they're getting stuck because they're trying to bring off the first 3 chapters in perfection. And it's what Dawn said, learning to embrace the powerlessness of our lives. The hardest thing you'll ever do. But they're getting stuck until they can embrace the powerlessness of their lives perfectly. Well, that once you've got the idea, you move on, because the book does that. The journey of the book takes you to the place where you will be able to embrace the powerlessness of our lives. So my aim with the book is that it would be widely used, that's the idea, and to open up an ongoing conversation. As Sam has said, the ongoing conversation could be in person. If you want to talk to me about it, I'm happy to talk. Could be on Zoom. Or it could, I've set up a Facebook. I've never done social media, so I don't really know what I'm talking about. But I've set up a Facebook group, and the idea is that an ongoing conversation might go on there. So that's basically the reason for the book. But what I'd like to do now is I'd like to focus in on the substance or the main point of the book. And the main point of the book is that we live with this illusion that we can make life happen for us and for ours, and that we have to. It's perfectly understandable that we feel we have to make life happen in our households. We have to make life happen for our kids. We have to make life happen for our partners. You know, we've got this, it's understandable that we feel that it's down to us. But that's not the life God has given us. It's perfectly understandable to believe we have to make life happen at work, in employment. We're paid for it. Surely it's down to us to make things happen. I deal with this in the book, and I've worked in industry, and I've worked in commerce, and I've worked at the bottom, and I've worked at the top, and I can tell you, you don't have to try and make it happen. In fact, you can't. there is a way through. You see, after all, at the end of the day, in our households need to be attended to. Our kids need to be sorted. Work results need to be achieved. And sometimes we feel as though it's down to us to make our hopes and dreams happen. Because if we don't, who will? Well, there is a God in heaven. Yeah? When we used to say, there is a God. Isn't that good news? But we're living often as though there isn't. How do we know when we're, well, I don't want to put this on you, but life's too short. We do live on the basis that it's down to us to make life happen. What does that look like? Some of us will work hard, relentlessly, compulsively, or even fearfully, just blindly pushing ahead, believing the lie that we can and must make life happen. Sometimes we realize we can't make life happen, but we still believe that we should. Otherwise, things will go out of control. That affects who we're becoming. That affects the way we behave. The pressure of having to make life happen in the household, as parents, as grandparents, as children, perhaps with older parents. It affects, if we cross the line into believing it's down to us to make it happen, it will change the sort of person we are becoming. It will affect our behavior, the way we relate to people. We pick up wounds that never seem to heal. Yeah, we pick up wounds that never seem to heal. Wounds of hurt, defeat, unmet entitlement, perhaps unrealized dreams. We pick up wounds of disappointment or disillusionment, a relationship breakdown. When we feel it's down to us to make things happen and it doesn't happen, relationships break down. And God says, what are you doing here? You're trespassing. You shouldn't be. It's not down to you to make life happen. My Father is in heaven. Yeah. We just don't grow spiritually in the way I've been sort of saying. Jesus is saying we don't have to live like this. Instead of fighting to make it happen or just giving up or giving in, we can learn to give way. That's a whole new thing. There's a chapter in this in the book, which I thank Sam for, because it wasn't there originally, and he said something to me one day, and I thought, oh my goodness. So I wrote another chapter, and it's called The Principle of Giving Way. We can learn to give way to life as it comes to us. To give way, to make way for Jesus' way. Yeah. To become the kind of person who can walk the Jesus way, we need a spiritual journey, which is what the book's all about. Well, I just want to focus on this. I can't give you something now in this moment to equip you to become more like Jesus. You need a journey. The book is one of many journeys, but it is written as a journey, so it's packaged. But I can't fix that for you today. I can't address that because it takes a journey. However, I'd just like to attend to what might have happened when I said, when we believe we need to make life happen and it doesn't, we pick up wounds that never seem to heal. And I sensed that when I said that, the Spirit said, there it is. We can attend to that now. We can attend to that now. The journey will take a while. But I've spent most of my life trying to make life happen for my kids, for our household, at work, in community. But I started to change direction about 20 years ago. It's taken me this long to get this far. The idea of the book is it will get you there in 14 weeks if you follow it. It will get you to a place where you think, there is another way to live. When I said we pick up wounds that never seem to heal, hurt, defeat, perhaps unmet entitlement, unrealized dreams, not really growing up. We need to grow up before we grow old. So let's pray about that. Jesus says, I can attend to that. Would you like to stand?